And welcome back. TikTok is now calling on the Supreme Court to review legislation that would ban the app in the U.S. unless its China-based parent company, ByteDance, sells it by next month. A federal appeals court upheld the legislation last week. In her exclusive interview, my Meet the Press colleague Kristen Welker asked President-elect Donald Trump, a one-time antagonist turned enthusiast of the app, about his view of the ruling.
This week, a federal court upheld a law that could result in TikTok being banned. You said you're going to rescue TikTok when you get into office. Are you going to take steps to protect it?
Yeah, and as you know, I used TikTok very successfully in my campaign. I have a man named TikTok Jack. He was very effective, obviously, because I won youth by 30%. All Republicans lose youth. I don't know why. Maybe it's changing. And last time we were down 30% with youth. This time we're up 35% with youth. And I use TikTok, so I can't really, I can't totally hate it. It was very effective. But I will say this, if you do that, something else is going to come along and take its place. And maybe that's not fair. What they're doing, and really what the judge actually said was that you can't have Chinese companies. In other words, they have the right to ban it if you can prove that the Chinese companies own it. That's what the judge actually said.
So are you going to try to protect TikTok just very quick once you're in office?
I'm going to try and make it so that other companies don't become an even bigger monopoly.
Joining me now is Illinois Congressman, Democratic Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy. He is the ranking member on the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party and a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, we appreciate you making time today.
Sure thing. Thank you so much for having me.
I do want to start with last week's appeals court decision on TikTok. I know you applauded that ruling, but TikTok, we know, is now appealing to the Supreme Court and has added Donald Trump's former Solicitor General to its legal team, anticipating that there will be a Supreme Court fight here. What's your read on this moment, what we've heard to this point? What does it tell you about potentially a fight ahead?
I think it's time for ByteDance and TikTok to accept the law. It's time to sell. And I saw just today Frank McCourt has put together a group to purchase TikTok USA from ByteDance. I know there are numerous others that would be interested. And Donald Trump should help to, bring this deal together. It'd be the deal of the year. If he could make that happen, I think that's the way to proceed. This law has been upheld now in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. I expect it will be upheld in the Supreme Court. And now all three branches of government has basically given ByteDance the instruction, it's time to sell.
Well, you heard the president-elect there tell Kristen his thoughts about TikTok, right? Trump said that he said on the trail that he's going to save TikTok. Kristen asked him about that. Is there something he can do along those lines? What do you think that might look like?
Sure. He should encourage bidders. He should encourage ByteDance to sell, to accept the law. We can't have a CCP-controlled app with the CCP having access to millions and millions of Americans' data. This court made it very clear that this particular law puts in place kind of a situation that minimizes interference with the First Amendment, allows TikTok to survive, but at the same time mitigates against the threat, which is the CCP's control of the app.
I want to stay on the topic of China for a moment here, if we can. According to Reuters, there are Chinese officials who've signaled that they are ready to spend money and to go into debt to try to counteract any U.S. tariffs that might come their way in the Trump administration. If the president-elect raises tariffs on China, what do you expect? Are they going to take that lightly? What sort of escalation would you anticipate, and what might it look like from China?
Well, I think that the strategic tariffing that has been adopted in the first Trump administration and then the Biden administration and now adopted in Congress makes sense. That means where there's economic aggression, where there are economic and security concerns, or there's dumping or other types of violations of trade rules, we should level the playing field. However, across-the-board tariffs on all Chinese stuff, or for that matter, all other countries' goods, could invite retaliatory tariffs, and then we have a full-blown trade war and inflation, not to mention cleaving the relationships that we have with friends, partners, and allies that are necessary for countering aggression by the CCP.
Well, let's move on here. We know this morning that we got this IG report that outlined how the DOJ under former President Trump at the time, obtained text messages and phone logs from members of Congress, from your staffers, from members of the media as well during his first term in office. What's your reaction to that report, and do you think this sort of previews what could happen in a second term?
It does, and also it basically tells you about kind of the excesses associated with leak investigations. Leak investigations are a way, potentially, if they're abused, to basically go after journalists and then to go after their sources. And that's apparently what might have happened here. Not only did they fail to notify journalists whose information had been seized or whose records had been seized, they'd failed to notify the Attorney General. I'm talking about the DOJ prosecutors who initiated these investigations. And then they actually went after sources. And I think, ironically, Kash Patel might have been potentially caught up in that whole investigation that might have gone too far.
While I have you, I do want to ask you about some of what's been happening inside your party there on the Hill. You're on the House Oversight Committee. There's this race now between Jerry Connolly of Virginia and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York for the ranking member slot there. I see you smiling. Who do you think should get it?
I think you're trying to get me into trouble. I'm listening to everyone who is entering this race. They are both my friends and colleagues. I respect them greatly, and I look forward to hearing their vision for how they both conduct oversight with regard to a future Trump administration, but also how we work together on certain issues with the other side, such as on PBM reform, which has commanded a lot of support on both sides of the aisle and needs to move forward.
I want to ask you generally, though. I mean, there's one member of the House Democratic Caucus who told us that if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wins, it's the end of seniority. Do you agree with that? Do you think that the process needs some shaking up? Do you think we've talked so much about during the campaign that we just ended about age being a factor in some of these sorts of decisions about who should be leading and passing the baton to the next generation was something we heard from Vice President Harris. What's your thought about that?
I think that age is a factor, but it's not the deciding factor in terms of who we as Democrats select as our leadership. You see that up and down the line from Hakeem Jeffries to others. I think that the most important thing is who's going to be most effective, whose vision will resonate with the caucus, and how do we move forward in a way that reflects the reality of the election, and we do the business of the American people. That's what is most important. How do we solve problems for our constituents and the American people going forward?
Would you like to see the Democratic Party do more to cultivate next generations of leadership, or do you feel like enough is being done in that regard?
I think we can always do more, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen going forward. And I think that our caucus is blessed with, I guess, a cornucopia of wonderful leaders of all ages.
All right. We will leave it there for now. Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.